Hi, I'm Larry London. Welcome to Border Crossings. On today's show, we welcome a singer, songwriter, and actor to our studios, Steve Earle. He's been releasing CDs since 1982, and his songs have been recorded by artists like Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Vince Gill, and many others. Steve has earned 3 Grammy Awards and numerous other accolades. Steve Earle has written a novel, a play, and a book of short stories. He's been married 7 times, twice to the same woman, and he served time in prison for drug addiction crimes. Steve Earle joins us today to share some of his most private and inspirational moments, along with some music. Stick around. This is Border Crossings with Steve Earle. Hi, this is Larry London. We welcome you to Border Crossings, and today on our show, we welcome into our studios a very special guest. He's on the road for album number 17. Steve Earle is with us. Not only does he have 17 albums, he also is the proud owner of 3 Grammys and multiple other awards as well. We welcome Steve to D.C. and to the Voice of America.
How are you?
It's great to see you in person.
It's good to be here.
I've heard your music for many years, and you don't look like an outlaw in person, I'll tell you that.
Well, I'm not sure what I look like either. Maybe it's like it just depends on what maybe I look a little more outlawish by the time I hit the stage tonight.
So what is the outlaw kind of music to you? I mean, as a guy who's been inspired by outlaw music.
It was part of the reason for making this record was to rehabilitate the term outlaw. I'm on a radio network called Outlaw. I'm on, and the term gets used. And a guy was interviewing me from Australia the other day, and he said, well, the outlaw thing, it was as much about the lifestyle, wasn't it? The things that you guys were doing besides music, and the answer is no, because I was there. I was in Texas when Willie Nelson moved back, and when Doug Sahm, and this is the part people leave out of the history, Doug Sahm, the Sir Douglas Quintet, moved back to San Antonio for a minute and then to Austin, and he and Willie sort of arrived at the same time, coming from entertainment centers to their home state. And it was Doug that suggested to Willie he could play Armadillo World Headquarters and not just country dance halls. And Doug that introduced him to Jerry Wexler, which resulted in the Atlantic deal and Willie recording Shotgun Willie, which was sort of the beginning of all this. And Willie makes Shotgun Willie in phases and stages. Waylon Jennings makes like Honky Tonk Heroes. It takes another year for him to get it out because he's still on RCA. And basically it was about country artists discovering that rock artists had artistic freedom that they didn't have, and they wanted that too. So because they stood up for making records the way they wanted to, they got called outlaws, and it really was as simple as that.
And you've been around the block a few times. I mean, 17 albums?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, and there's 5 years in there that I lost that are kind of like between 35 and 40. I didn't start making records until my early 30s because it took me a long time to get a record deal, and Danny Goldberg, who's my manager now, used to own a record label that I recorded for. He said, no, your secret's safe with me. You like to make records. I like to put them out. It's fine. I do. I like to write songs and make records. That's what I do. So.
Wow. And so favorite part of this business, is it the singing or the writing of the songs?
It's both. I mean, because I'm a singer-songwriter. I was taught to do this by Townes Van Zandt and Guy Clark, and almost directly. And Guy said, and I say this all the time, I teach a songwriting camp in upstate New York. Just that there's different kinds of songwriting, different reasons for doing it. But I'm a post-Bob Dylan singer-songwriter. Mm-hmm. And that means that songs aren't finished, as Guy said, until you play them for people. Mm. I mean, it flatters me when other people record them, but I write them mainly to perform myself. That's part of it's a performance art. You make it, and it's an ancient thing. It's like. It was probably literature when it started, and then it became pop culture, and then Bob Dylan sort of re-elevated it to literature. And, all pop music doesn't have to be art, but it can be. I think the time that I learned how to do this, it was, and the bar was very high. So I expect a lot of myself when I do it. I'm writing songs that I hope are going to stay around after I'm gone. And I got a few that I think are.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've got quite a collection and all the awards and the things that you've done. And you've definitely been very diverse in this business. You've given music to other people like Johnny Cash. I mean, not many people can say they wrote a song, sung by Johnny Cash.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Johnny Cash is a big deal to guys my age that do this, especially if you kind of grew up with I did. I grew up in Texas with long hair and cowboy boots, and so I was sort of culturally confused for a while. I mean, it took me a long time to be able to make records, but people knew I could write. I got to Nashville. I got a publishing deal almost immediately. And but the inmates, the Outlaw thing was happening, and the inmates were in charge of the asylum at the moment that I got there. But that window closed pretty quickly, and I just didn't get a record deal in time. So it took me another 10 or 12 years. And I'm more of a product as a recording artist of the great credibility scare of the mid-1980s in Nashville. It happens every once in a while. They'll sort of let a few people like me through.
We're talking to the legendary Steve Earle, who's in our studios and on tour promoting his latest album, So You Want to Be an Outlaw. Steve, would you do a song for us?
Yeah, this is the title track, and if you buy the record, you get Willie Nelson on the second verse instead of me. So you want to be an outlaw, buddy, listen to me. Living on the highway ain't everything it's supposed to be. Everybody reckons that they want to be free. Ain't nobody wants to be alone. Running down the alley at 2:45. Hollering for Sally, honey, what you trying to do to me? She said, go to hell, I'm going back to Tennessee. I said, Angel, you can never go home. Never go home. Never go home. If you want to be an outlaw, you can never go home. So you want to be an outlaw, better listen up, kid. Steal $1 million and you had to keep it hid. Ain't no place to spend it in the desert if you did. Can't take it with you when you go. Something always laying for you up around the bend. Everything goes around, come back around again. Can't trust anybody, not a lover or a friend. Your mama maybe, then you never know. Never do know. Never do know. If you want to be an outlaw, then you never do know. So you wanna be an outlaw, boy, you better think twice. Better not pout, better not cry. Won't nobody give a damn about you when you die, but the devil when the comforts do. If you're standing at the crossroads, don't you try to flag a ride. Don't you fall down on your knees, don't you know it's already been tried. Hate to tell you, but the only upside, you sing a devil out of the blues. Singing the blues, keep on singing the blues. Sing the So You Say You Wanna Be an Outlaw blues. Hey, hey.
Clapping around the world right now. Steve Earle is our guest, and So You Want to Be an Outlaw, the new album. We just heard the title track. Now, in a way, you are an outlaw. I mean, I read where you were in prison. I mean, at some point in your life. I know it's years ago.
Well,
it's in the past, but you did spend some time.
I was the dumbest person in the whole world. I caught 11-month and 29-day sentence for simple possession, first offense of 1/10 of a gram of heroin because I didn't show up for my sentencing hearing, and I thought I had something more important to do, and nothing so like God on earth as generals on battlefields and judges in their courtrooms, So I got 11 months and 29 days.
Must have changed you. I mean, that experience.
Yeah, I did. I just did a few months. They finally managed to talk him into letting me go. But it was and what happened? What changed was I got a chance to go to treatment. Now I didn't go to. I've been using drugs all my life, and I just finally started making enough money to consistently afford the good stuff, and I got into trouble really, really quickly. And it was. All of a sudden, all that stuff that happened to all those. I mean, I've used successfully, as they say, for a number of years. But then all of a sudden, all that stuff that happened to all those other junkies started to happen to me. I'd never caught a drug charge, and then all of a sudden, I had two. I literally went to court, pled guilty to that heroin charge, left the courtroom still in my suit, tried to buy some crack in the projects, and caught another charge. I mean, that day, I hadn't even loosened my tie. So.
Wow.
That's how, that's why they call it dope. You start doing stuff like that. It's just a matter of time. And I just ended up, I didn't go to, I was in jail. I didn't want to be there. I'd never been in jail in a situation where nobody could come bail me out. So, but they sent me to treatment, and I went to get in out of an orange suit. And because I don't look good in that color. And I decided that, as soon as I felt good physically, that I would walk out of there, because there's a place called Buffalo Valley. It was in the middle of nowhere, but there was no fence around it. Now, it was kind of a joke around there. Was the only other thing in Hohenwald, Tennessee, besides Buffalo Valley, which is a very bare bones treatment center the state used to be able to send you to, back when there was money for that, is an elephant sanctuary. So the joke was, if you bailed out of Buffalo Valley, the first thing you were going to run into was an elephant in Middle Tennessee, but which would be incongruous, and you'd probably go right back to the treatment center. So I didn't, after a few days, I figured out that the Hohenwald police didn't do anything but pick up people that walked out of Buffalo Valley, and it was, plus that's a federal escape charge if I'd left there while I was furloughed to the treatment center. So I saw a movie, believe it or not, called My Name is Bill W., and about the founding of 12-step programs, about the two guys that started the whole thing. And this light kind of went off, that what they talk about, that moment of clarity. I realized who all the guys that were sleeping on my grandfather's couch were, because my grandfather got sober in New York City right after World War II, knew Bill W., knew Dr. Bob, and he came back and kicking and screaming to run the family hardware store in Jacksonville, Texas, because his stepfather had died. His mother insisted that he come home. He did not want to leave, and he came back, and he brought, he started nearly every meeting in Northeast Texas over the next 20 or 30 years. And I just suddenly, I grew up with the steps and the Serenade prayer on the wall. So, and I avoided it because I had evidence in my life that it might work, and I wasn't ready. So I suddenly had that to fall back on. And so I started doing what was suggested to me, and I had to go back to jail, do a little bit more time, and then I got out. And I made a decision the night they let me out of jail. They gave me my property, and there was a $20 bill that I'd missed. This is so weird. I don't know how. I intended to spend every bit of money I had, before I went to jail, but because I turned myself in finally, because it'd been a warrant out for a while. And I found this $20 bill, and it was midnight, and I made the decision to stay inside until somebody came and picked me up, rather than, walk out the door and turn right. And that's the decision everybody got to make. And next day, I went to my first meeting in the free world, and that was 22 years ago. And I still do the same thing. I go to meetings, I call my sponsor, and I sponsor people.
We're peeling back the onion, the layers here. The onion today, Steve Earle, who's opening up and being very honest and candid, and we appreciate that. And he's on the road right now for a new album. Would you do another song for us?
Yeah, this song is actually, I'm really proud of, because it's kind of a folk song. Right now, it's summertime, so it's burn season, and all across the country, there are young men and a handful of young women who don't mind being stuck out in the woods with a bunch of smelly guys doing something dangerous for days and weeks at a time. And they're fighting these fires that break out every summer all across the country. And those people are called hot shots, and this is for them. Well, I'm cutting out a firebreak line, cutting out a firebreak line, digging down deep to the clay and lime, cutting out a firebreak line. Well, I'm a wild fighting fool on the Yellow Mountain hot shot crew. I can swamp and fell, walk through hell. I'm an EMT and a torch man too. When the wind's blowing hot and dry, and the sparks and the cinders fly, I'll make my stand with 20 good men, a better band of brothers you'll never find. Got their back, they got mine. When I'm cutting out a firebreak line, well, I'm cutting out a firebreak line, cutting out a firebreak line, digging down deep to the clay and lime, cutting out a firebreak line. Lasky is a friend of mine. When I'm cutting out a fire break line, he invented this thing like an axe I swing. Never left a member of his crew behind. Come across a line, he took him down in an abandoned mine. He drew his gun, said he'd shoot the first one. Got it in his head to try to go outside. Got everybody out alive. Lasky is a friend of mine. When I'm cutting out a fire break line, cutting out a fire break line, digging down deep to the clay and lime, cutting out a fire break line. Woo! Well, I'm cutting out a fire break line, cutting out a fire break line, digging down deep to the clay and lime, cutting out a fire break line. Better pray that the wind will die and it rain down from on high. Let's raise a glass to the hot shots past, hot shot heaven up above the sky, looking down on me when I'm cutting out a fire break line. Well, I'm cutting out a fire break line, cutting out a fire break line, digging down deep to the clay and lime, cutting out a fire break line. Well, I'm cutting out a fire break line, cutting out a fire break line, digging down deep to the clay and lime, cutting out a fire break line.
Yes, sir. Steve Earle. Woo! Love it. You sound great. 11-time Grammy nominee. You've done an awful lot for the business. You've influenced so many of your friends. Willie Nelson, these are your buddies. You're out at Farm Aid. You're doing the festivals, traveling the world. Looking back, is there a highlight? Is there one? Was it the first Grammy out of the three? Of course, you've been nominated 11 times, but
yeah,
is there a highlight?
Well, it was a big deal to get nominated all those times. The first time I got nominated, I was actually on the broadcast. Normally, the awards I'm nominated for on the pre-broadcast, because there's a lot more awards they can get on the TV show, and the TV show is too damn long as it is. But it's not. I don't know. That's hard to say. I mean, I've met most of my heroes that are still alive, and I've only been disappointed twice, and which is pretty good.
Really?
Yeah, only twice. And
you're not going to tell us who?
No, I'm not going to tell you.
Of course.
And maybe if they were dead, I'd tell you, but they're not. And it's I kind of I've played Carnegie Hall, and I did practice, to get there, and I've done. There's a few places I haven't been.
Mm-hmm.
As far as what I do for a living, now what's left for me is the reason I moved to New York 12 years ago is I want to write a Broadway musical. I never thought I would want to do that, but I mean, I want to write the kind of thing that I do. I've got one in development. I'm talking to a theater company about it now. The idea is for it's the kind of thing that could open off Broadway and then move up.
What's the story?
It's called Washington Square Serenade. It's based on that record of mine,
Okay.
and which I did win a Grammy for. And it's based on sort of the folk boom musically, but it's set in Washington Square Park,
Mm-hmm.
and it's about a kid who dropped out of NYU and he busts in the park, and his girlfriend is a graduate student at NYU, and she kind of hates New York and wants out of there. And he's right on the cusp of losing her because all he wants to do is hang out with these guys that he knows in the park, and the guys he busts with, and he hangs out with the chess players and all that stuff. And it's sort of based on a piece of history and a lot of history about the park itself. Washington Square Park, beneath those beautiful paving stones and all that landscaping are the remains of 20,000 human beings, because it was a potter's field, and there were probably 6,000 or 7,000 people there, and then 3 plagues in a row filled it up really fast, and they limed it over, and they kind of forgot about it. It also has history before that. The Lenape Indians farmed tobacco there. Then half-freed slaves, they were called. They were slaves that belonged to the property of the Dutch East India Company, were given that land to farm in return for forming a militia to form a buffer between the Dutch
Mm-hmm.
and the Indians themselves, because they wanted that land back, and they would occasionally come back and try to take it back. And those guys, most of those guys are buried in the African burial ground. We know who nearly all of them were, but they all farmed that area that is now Washington Square Park and that part of Greenwich Village. You know, and I don't want to give too much about it away, but it's based. There's a little bit of a ghost story involved, and a lot about the history of the park, and this kid and his love for the area. And he knows. He gives walking tours. He busts in the park and he gives walking tours of Greenwich Village to make a living. And so the audience learns about the history of downtown New York in the process. And it'll be called Washington Square Serenade. And I'm working on that. I'm also doing David Simon and I are in the talking stages of a musical about Sparrows Point in Baltimore, which is a neighborhood where Southern black and white culture was thrown together to work at Bethlehem Still and kind of created, you know. Baltimore was a very unique place at its peak. It still is, and I know a little bit too much about it because I was in the wire and I was there a lot for several years. But it's I know where all the good lake trout places are, and it's just you know just did music for the new Richard Maxwell play for Soho Rep and ended up in that play, which was terrifying. Acting in films and television is one thing, but acting on stage in New York City is another thing altogether. So. But I do have that on my resume now. So theater's kind of what I live for. I live for when I'm off the road, which isn't very much. But the only thing I do is I collect guitars, I go see theater, and I go see Major League Baseball. I need live theater and Major League Baseball in my life at this point. So I live in New York City.
And you've been with the same band for a while.
Well, there's some guys that it's a breathing organism. It's like Kelly Looney, the bass player, has been with me since 1988. Chris Masterson and Whit Murray play guitar and fiddle, and they're a married couple. They also make records on their own as the Mastersons. They've been in the band 8 years now. Steel players new came for this record because I hadn't had pedal steel in the band for a long time. Desperately needed it for this record, and we changed drummers after 15 years last year. Brad Pemberton. He's from Nashville, Tennessee. He's like kind of the best drummer in Nashville these days. He was in Ryan Adams' band for about 10 years. He was in the Cardinals, and Will Rigby had been with me for a long time. Just got tired of being on the road, and it's how I make my living. So I mean, I'm getting homesick now for the first time in my life. I miss New York when I'm gone, and I've got a 7-year-old, and he has autism, and that's kind of a big center of my life. One of my main areas of activism now is raising money for his school and raising money for autism awareness. And for me, the truth of the matter is, New York City's the only place where the resources are even close to what kids need, that they even exist at all. And they're only available for an incredibly small percentage of the population that can either afford to pay for it out of pocket or lawyer up and sue the city, because there's a federal law that says that if you're in a public school system and that public school system can't provide a service to your child, that school system is required to compensate you for the cost of acquiring that treatment and that education privately. The funds to fund that only exist in New York City, but even in New York, you have to lawyer up to get it. I can't afford the school that John Henry's in. I make good money, but the school's, I mean, I'm not going to say a number, but it's a lot of money because it's 40 hours a week of ABA therapy. The ratio is 1-on-1, and that's what's recommended. That's what every one of these kids needs and deserves. And we have 1 in 80 or 90 kids being born with autism now, somewhere on what they call the spectrum. That it's an epidemic. It's something environmental. We got to figure out what it is. We are. We have to be concerned in this case with both how the mule got in the ditch and how to get him out, because we have to deal with this aging population of kids that are growing up with autism. Some of them eventually speak. Some of them don't, and we just don't know how that's going to turn out. And you meet one person with autism, you met one person with autism. It's all different, and the outcomes. The main thing is never give up. Right. And there are resources, out there. There need to be way, 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 way more, and it requires education. It's going to take some time to fix it, but we need to get on it because, the kids. Some of these kids are brilliant. Mine's pretty smart, and he just doesn't talk. The person that's going to figure out how to cure cancer is possibly out there and won't be able to tell us. That's what we're up against. That's what we're in danger of losing.
Wow, very interesting, Steve Earle. And, you know, we're near the end here, but you know, we could go on and on and on. And I thank you so much for joining us. And we've, you know, the new album is out. It's dedicated to your mentor, Guy Clark, who passed away.
Yeah, it's I dedicated to Waylon Jennings, but he's gone too. But Guy passed away last year when I was writing these songs, and this was. Guy was a great story songwriter, and he was a great craftsman. And, you know, I had two main teachers, Townes Van Zandt and Guy Clark. Townes was more like, give me a copy of Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee and tell me to go read it. But Guy would show me how he laid songs out on a piece of paper, and I learned a lot about the craft from him. And this was when he passed away. We had a wake in Nashville, and then when it was over, we took his ashes to Santa Fe, New Mexico, where his ashes are still there, waiting to go into bronze by Terry Allen, because that's what he said he wanted, or at least that's what Terry said. We only have Terry's word for that now that I think about it, but that's what's going to happen with him. And when we got home, I wrote this. Goodbye, Michelangelo. Ain't no trouble where you go. Ain't no pain to burn you blind. Just enough to draw a line. Goodbye, Maestro, farewell. Gone to heaven, been to hell. Maybe just New Mexico. Goodbye, Michelangelo. Farewell, my captain, adios. Sail upon the sea of ghosts. Chase the white whale to the end. Bring the story back again. I'm bound to follow you someday. You have always shown the way. We knew where we had to go. Goodbye, Michelangelo. Don't you cry, he'll find you by and by, just like it did before. Saying forever is just goodbye till it comes my time. I won't have to travel blind. Taught me everything I know. Goodbye, Michelangelo.
Steve Earle, right here on The Voice of America. So You Want to Be an Outlaw. The album is out and available. People can get it on your website, I assume?
You can get it on the website. You can get it, you download it, and any of the other places you can download music. You can stream it. You can do all that stuff. Or you can go to a mom-and-pop-owned record store and buy it on vinyl. And you can also come out to the show, and we'll hook you up with one.
All right. Where can people find out more about Steve Earle? Give us your...
SteveEarle.com. And I had to buy it back, but it's SteveEarle.com. so that's the way that works sometimes.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
What a pleasure. Come back and see us again when you're in D.C. Steve Earle, our guest today. This is Border Crossings.